welcome to Rumblecast TV. This is episode 1 of what will clearly be an award-winning boxing show, probably the #1 show in the land by Christmas. What we aim to do is keep you up to date with everything in the boxing world, where to find the best interviews, where the best action's at, what's coming up and what's just happened. In this week's show, we're going to preview Eddie Hearn's Matchroom show from last weekend, and then we're going to look forward to Frank's show, the Queensberry show, coming up with Daniel Dubois and Joyce, which is a really intriguing fight, lots to talk about. We'll also touch on the Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. fight. You'll hear the tone in my voice. We'll come to our opinions about whether that should be happening later in the show. So, Blair, how are we?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Mark. Yeah, really looking forward to going through last week's boxing. Some really exciting exchanges, and we've seen some really promising talent burgeoning through the last week's card. Some exciting sort of talk about different opportunities after last week, and yeah, like you say, we've got the hot mess that is the classic fight of Jones and Tyson to unpick. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Right, okay. Well, obviously on the Matchroom card last week, the 3 fights that I want to really concentrate on are the Ben Formella fight, the Wardley-Larty fight, and the Babbage-Little fight. But I want to start with a very, very special mention to a fight that was on the undercard a little bit further down the list, Jez Smith and Ben Ridings. Now, I don't know if you saw in the press conference, Ben Ridings, for somebody that had 3 fights, was a little bit cocky. He was going to knock him out, and he was, he was just he seemed a little bit sure of himself to me. And
you've got to love youthful exuberance, my friend.
I have to say, when the fight, from the second the first bell rang, he got an absolute boxing lesson from Jez Smith. It was a brilliant performance.
It certainly was. I agree entirely. To say that he was well and truly schooled is putting it lightly.
Yeah, it was a great performance. He just could not cope with the hand speed, the movement, and he just didn't get anything going, Ridings. He couldn't get anything going to work off, and he was just being outworked, outthought. Great performance from Smith, and let's hope that Ben Ridings learns a lot from that. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's hope so. It's not the kind of thing you want to do. You don't want to be trash talking an opponent when you've got absolutely no record yourself to speak of. The interesting thing for me is I didn't know anything about Ridings going into this fight, so it seemed a very, very strange situation that he'd have the confidence after 3 fights only to be calling out somebody like Smith, who's got a decent pedigree of 15 fights. That's not to be sniffed at. We've got world champions with less than 15 under their belt, really. So I mean, what can you tell me about Ridings, Mark? I don't really know a lot about him.
To be honest, I don't know a lot about Ben Ridings myself. I think what happened was there may have been some pullouts or some injuries or some COVID tests or something. And I think Eddie just called the local managers and promoters and said, right, who have you got that will just give me a tear up on the undercard? Somebody that's just going to come and have a scrap. And those were the 2 names that popped up, and they immediately both said yes. So big credit to both of them for taking the fight. I think it might have been a little bit early for Ridings on reflection, as was sort of borne out in the result. And I think Jez Smith showed a bit of potential there. I mean, we genuinely don't know what level he can go on to fight at. The truth is, I think they're in and around the sort of middleweight, super middleweight category. To go and do any sort of serious damage at elite level there are some supremely gifted fighters that are way out of Smith's league at this point, for sure. You're talking about people like Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez. That's a huge. It's a million miles away from the fight that we saw on Saturday.
He's not ready for anything like that yet. There's no point even speculating on that.
We don't know whether he can do something at domestic level, European level.
Oh, I fancy him from what I saw, but I mean, it's very early to call. Like you say, very early to call. I mean, one thing we can say, it was tremendous entertainment value for a really sort of a low down the card fight. Yeah. It really was. So again, Matchroom and Eddie Hearn proving that they're still able to deliver the goods regardless of where on the card that sits. So yeah, it was tremendous. It was entertaining. Ridings looked completely out of his depth. He looked, honestly, like he had no power in his gloves really after the first round. So it looked very, very, very easy for Jez Smith. And ultimately, you saw yourself, that kid ended up really enjoying that boxing match.
He was whooping and shouting.
His fist, shouting, whooping. Yeah. So, yeah, a little bit of flair, a little bit of character there. Always nice to see in a young, emerging boxer. So, yeah, I thought in terms of entertainment value, given the fact that there'd been the trash talk prior to it, it really delivered. Really was an entertaining fight. And yeah, we've got two people. Yeah, I'm not writing Ridings off. We've got two people to watch out for in the future there. Let's hope good things come to both of them.
Yeah, I think Smith's certainly done enough to earn himself the right on some more matchroom cards. Eddie tends to look after the people that put it on the line and get in there and give you give you a fight like that. And yeah, Ridings is young, he can come again. He's going to learn from that fight.
Yes.
He'll probably learn more from that than he did from the 3 victories that he had, let's put it that way.
I would imagine so, yeah, absolutely. It can be humbling. So yeah, let's hope he takes that on board and moves forward. Right, so what's next then, my friend?
So the next fight that I want to talk to you about, Blair, which was really the fight that I was looking forward to the most on this bill. There's just so much excitement around Alan the Savage Babbage. And everybody keeps saying, much to his disdain, he's been very annoyed about this, he's too small, we don't know how good he is, he's not fought anybody yet, etc, etc, etc. But whatever they've put in front of him so far, he has demolished. He's relentless. His fighting style reminds me of Mike Tyson. He just absolutely, he's straight at you, he's not bothered what's coming back, and he just wants to smash you till there's nothing left. And I have to say, in that fight, I thought Tom Little showed flashes of what a brilliant boxer he had the potential to be. There was some brilliant counterpunching in there for as long as it lasted. But eventually, it looks like, unless you can punch really hard and keep the Savage off you, he just keeps coming in. He's going to get, the volume of punches mean that he's just going to get you in the end. And that's exactly what happened with Tom Little, bless him, who I think has retired since the fight, which I think is a great move. I think it's probably, it's run its course now by his own admission. He took a lot of fights at short notice with no training camps. He didn't really look after himself and live the life like we know you have to if you're gonna do anything great in this sport.
Absolutely.
Talent alone isn't going to do it for you. Then you need to be in the sort of shape that he was for this fight. Had he been doing that for 10 years, then that might have been a different outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of points you mentioned there that I absolutely 100% agree with. So looking at Babbage and his raw approach to that, and his low down centre of gravity, the hunched shoulders, and the speed of those swinging arms, definitely reminiscent of a young Mike Tyson, 19, 20-year-old Mike Tyson. And so far, he's ticking the names off. So yeah, interesting. I'd like to see now him move past the sort of the Tom Little type opponents and onto something that's probably a bit more of a genuine challenge to him. Because I mean, like you say, Tom Little has never really lived the life. He's never really looked after himself. And what I like to see, especially with what looks to be a burgeoning talent like the Savage, is that they're getting tried and tested against extreme athletes that are at the top of the game, really. And as much of a decent journeyman as Little is, as we've said, he's just never lived the life. He's not a real challenge to me in that sense, because he's not a supreme athlete. So I'd like to see the Savage up against somebody who's got a bit more metal to test.
I think he might become difficult to match because I'm not sure who at the level that we'd like to see him rise to now. I'm not sure who's going to fancy the job.
No one's going to fancy that, are they? Although, no, look, we say that there's always somebody who fancies it. There's always someone who's gung ho enough, and let's just hope. I mean, who's his trainer? Where's his promotion coming from?
Well, he's managed by Dillian White.
There you go.
And from listening to the interviews with Alan, I believe I don't know who his coach is, but he's an Olympic coach. One of the things that upset him in the build-up to this fight was that Little was saying, well, he feels like he's got the beating of Babbage and he hasn't got the experience I've got, etc., etc. And Babbage was really upset by that. He's like, what are you talking about? I've been training for 10 years. My coach is an Olympic coach. I've done hundreds and hundreds of rounds with Dillian White.
Absolutely. So that just can't be overlooked, can it?
No, you can't.
You can see the difference. You could see the difference in that fight. One was a specimen of a fighter. One looked like a dad who just stepped out of his garage and put on a pair of shorts, to be honest. And that's no disrespect to Tom Little. I really, I admire the courage and the strength of any man that's prepared to put their life on the line and get into the ring like that. But I do think, Tom, you're a champ for making the right decision and stepping down, absolutely. In my opinion, the game should be, all or nothing. You've got to live the life. And we've seen people that don't take it seriously get hurt, and no one wants to see that. So yeah, admirable decision to step down. Let's get the Savage onto better opponents now. And again, no disrespect to you, Tom, but better opponents, more challenged, more focused, and we'll see what the young man can bring. I'm really excited. And I think with, Dillian White and Matchroom behind him, there's no reason why he can't be taking title shots in 2021 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the big name that he wants, the big rival that he wants, of course, is his fellow countryman, Filip Hrgović. Now, everybody, when he started saying that, when he first sort of popped onto the scene in the Matchroom fight camp, everybody looked at him like he was mental. Like, why on earth do you want to... He's a giant and he punches like a mule. Why would you do that? But then when you hear the backstory, that he's been his main sparring partner in the past. And Babic believes that
they've got history.
Babic believes that he's been treated badly by him.
Right.
He believes that he's been, despite doing lots of good work for him, he was treated poorly. He believes that this man's not a nice man.
Okay.
And that's got under his skin a little bit. And he wants to prove that it doesn't matter whether he's a giant or not. He wants that fight. And I genuinely believe if they can match him right now, maybe a fight, maybe two fights, because Hrgović has got his own business to take care of. He's probably going to fight Michael Hunter next, which I think is a terrible mistake. Whoever's told him that's an easy fight, or whoever's told him that's a fight he can win, I think they are incredibly mistaken.
Michael Hunter, the boogeyman of the division, of course.
He really is. I mean, I think he's got a skill set that will cause Hrgović nightmares. Yeah. So that might bring the Babic and Hrgović fight closer. Once Hunter's handed him a defeat, which is what my prediction for that is. No disrespect. These are just opinions. No disrespect to Hrgović. He might turn out to be a world beater. I just don't. I think his record's a bit padded. I don't think there's. I look down his record and I don't see anything that terrifies me. Yeah. So they're talking about him sort of at a level that I don't believe him to be at. And I think the Savage feels exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we will do is find out when he fights Michael Hunter, because Michael Hunter, in my opinion, thrashed Alexander Povetkin in Saudi Arabia. How that was a draw, I don't know. And every time they've put him in with somebody, Hunter, that was meant to, he was brought over as the opponent in many ways.
Absolutely.
To fight people. And he was, he's beating people he's not meant to beat. And if you look at his record and his amateur pedigree, that's a serious contender. And incredibly difficult to match because nobody wants that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's not got a high enough profile to generate the sort of money to make people take that risk. It's not that they don't want to fight him, it's just that there's very little reward. He doesn't have a massive social media following, he's not been promoted properly.
That's it, he's kind of on the fringes of that division, isn't he, really? And like you say, he's not an easy fight for anybody in that division, which means that he's very easy to overlook, he's very easy to skip past, he's very easy to go for the bigger, sort of more cash intensive, high profile pay-per-view fights. So the poor guy's not had his due yet, but like you say, the fight with Hrgović might just put him on a few people's lips. So fingers crossed.
He's certainly highly ranked and highly thought of, I think, by all of the governing bodies. So sooner or later, he's going to become somebody's mandatory problem. He's going to be a problem for most people in the division, I believe.
Yeah.
Hence the fact that I believe the choice was between him and Andy Ruiz when Joshua needed an opponent for the Madison Square Garden fight. And if whatever happened with Joshua to be defeated that night against Ruiz, I think that could have been an even worse.
It could have been a bigger upset.
Problem for him, because I think Hunter's a better fighter than Andy Ruiz. I do.
Yeah, definitely not to be overlooked. Not to be overlooked at all. We're straying a little bit from our savage.
Yes, we are. So it's about how they can match him. I think Michael Hunter might do him a favour in getting the dream fight that he wants with Hrgović eventually. But who knows how far he can go? Who knows?
Well, I think all the way to the top. The only thing that worries me is, in terms of a fighter for that division, he's a very small of stature fighter, really. And my personal opinion, Mark. I don't like to see the likes of a Tyson Fury, a giant man with all that extra weight and reach and power coming up against your smaller fighters in the division, really. So it almost presents its own challenges. There's almost a cut-off point with somebody like Babic. You're only able to naturally get to a certain point within the division, because then you are facing supergiants that are 6'9", twice the reach advantage, or well, not twice the reach advantage, but a significant reach advantage, a significant weight advantage. And you'll end up with a situation like poor old David Hay faced against Klitschko, when he was literally getting lent on and chucked around just for fun because of the sheer size and weight disparity, and that's my fear for Savage.
I think that's a pretty much a shared opinion across the board. It's something that's been upsetting Alan Babbage quite a lot.
Yeah.
That view. As he quite eloquently put it, "Fuck it, Eddie, bring me fucking giants, I fucking kill them." You know what I mean?
Let's hope he is a giant killer.
He wants them. The biggest fighters. He wants bring me the monsters.
And what is Eddie and the Matchroom guys saying about this? What's their take on Babbage?
Well, at this point, the post-fight interview, it's difficult for Eddie to make any sort of comments about what he thinks they'll do next because he's managed by Dillian White.
Of course.
So Dillian's going to map that road for him. Dillian will know what he wants to do next. And then it's just about whether it makes financial sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the numbers have to add up because, his profile's starting to build.
Yeah.
And obviously when people become more popular and the profiles start to build, they become more expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about clever matching, I think. But I'm really intrigued to see, really. He's one of them, isn't he? Where whether you think he can or whether you think he can't, you want to watch.
Oh no, I think he can. I think he naturally hits a huge barrier when you get up to the likes of Fury, when you get up to the likes of Joshua. Even when you look at somebody like Wilder, who's got that more sort of rangy frame about him.
Yeah.
I just think history proves me out on this as well. That they're challenges that are a little bit too far for your slightly smaller, more traditionally framed.
Yeah, it's the old cliche: kid, a good big and beats a good little, and that's
absolutely.
It's been widely said.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'll be watching. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, same as.
He's very entertaining, and he's now got his army, the Savage Army, the ever-growing Savage Army, which me and the missus are both members of.
Proud members of, eh?
We were.
Not that I'm his missus, by the way.
No, not this week. So yeah, the Savage marches on, and we love it. Let's have it right. The thing about Tom Little, as good a boxer, as good a technical boxer as he is.
Yeah.
He's never really been known for punch power. So when we find out how far the Savage can go. Will be when he fights somebody that's got the power to keep him off. So then we'll find out. But I suspect he's got levels. I suspect he can really box as well. He's not had to at this. At these levels, he's not having to.
Yeah. Well, look, he didn't look particularly tested. I mean, it was a decent show. Like you alluded to earlier, there were elements there where you could see the fighter that Tom Little could have been had he ever lived the life. But I really don't think that was a significant enough challenge for Alan Babbage at all.
It's hard to judge, isn't it?
It's very hard to judge. I want to see, and I'm not saying it's a bad fight at all. I am not saying that it was it's not like it was lined up against a taxi driver or a bouncer. We're not saying that the opponent wasn't class. I just think the opponent wasn't class enough. It was too easy for him.
I think that's a fair comment. So that's the Babbage Little fight.
Yeah, very good.
And good luck to Tom in his retirement. I hope he stays in boxing. I think he's got a lot of good things he can do.
Absolutely.
And he's a very funny guy.
Yeah,
he was brilliant in the bubble. He was hilarious. And I hope that because he's not fighting anymore, that doesn't mean that we don't get all the interviews with Coogan and Rob Tebbit and such like.
Tom, if you want to be our man in the bubble, then just give us a call and we'll get you set up.
Yeah, we'd love to do that, Tom, actually. So we move on now to another one of Dillian White's charges.
Okay.
The hugely exciting English champion Fabio Wardley.
Absolutely.
Now, what a performance this is.
Hugely exciting, huge in stature, huge in every respect.
6'5" and not really. Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything like the size he might become. Wardley, I think he's he's 6'5". He's got all the physical attributes.
And he's a very young man still, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think for me, from the fights that I'd seen so far, what impressed me was his footwork. For a big man, his feet are very, very quick, which means he's difficult to hit. He can be in range and out of range, and little steps here and there. He's got a very good IQ.
I've got to say, Mark, I was mesmerised by his movement. And in round one, I thought, I've not seen this kind of technical ability, like raw technical ability, in a fighter of that size. Well, since Fury switched it on, and since a young Joshua started tearing up the division.
Yeah. I mean, we shouldn't get carried away because he's at the level he's at. That said, we also watched while researching this for this first episode, Blair. We watched the Larty versus Daniel Dubois
We
fight.
did indeed, yeah. We did
And
indeed.
Larty gave him some really, really horrible, tricky moments in that
I think
fight.
he did, yeah, absolutely.
And while Daniel dealt with him in the end, you know, in the way that Dubois probably will deal with an awful lot of people,
yeah.
I think that shows you just what a good performance the Wardley one was against Larty.
It really does.
The knockout was devastating. I did not know he'd got one punch knockout power like that. I genuinely didn't know he could put people to sleep.
It was a shock. It was a shock for everybody. And I think, yeah, you make a really interesting point there. Going back and kind of looking at Larty's previous fights, really did cement the fact that this guy is no slouch. He's a genuine threat. He's a, you know, again, we're not talking a bouncer or a bus driver or something like that.
If you're no good, you're going to get found out against Larty for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, as we saw with the Dubois fight, he had him in little bits of trouble there. He triggered little chinks that I could see in the Dubois armour.
He made him retaliate, didn't he? And
He certainly did.
And then he was all out of shape and he got clipped.
And fingers crossed that's something that Daniel can work on and fix. But I mean, in terms of the Wardley fight, there was little chance for any of that to get put into effect, really. So you know, he was dominated. He looked like a different fighter just because of the sheer sort of a class performance that Wardley put in. And like I say, his body language, his movement, his technique in the first round made that fight entirely unwinnable for Larty straight away. And Larty must have been going through all kinds of game plans in his mind after that first round, looking to see what he could implement, looking to see how he could get in some way in this fight. And then before you know it, like you said, that devastating single punch knockout, which really excited me.
There just aren't too many that have that.
I've got to say, I've got to say, it left me breathless, my friend. It really did.
It was a stunning knockout.
Yeah.
The just before the knockout, he throws 2 or 3 jabs that really, really hurt Larty as well. And I started to think, blimey, this kid's got power in both his hands.
Absolutely.
Like really, really dangerous. I think Wardley could be the real deal. I genuinely do.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get, I don't want to get carried away. I'm not going to start calling people out on his behalf.
But he's got a really interesting story. I mean, I really want this kid to do well. I mean, from what I gather, he was essentially just doing a bit of pad work in a gym one day when he was discovered by the Dillian White team, wasn't he?
Well, I think he was doing some white collar boxing, yeah.
Right.
No amateur pedigree, nothing like that. He was just, I think they were just fighting in these charity fights, these sort of, office tear-ups or whatever.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure how the full story goes, but I think Dillian's just said to him, I don't know what you're wasting your time with that for.
Yeah.
Why don't you give it a go? And crikey.
Yeah, what a good call. Well spotted, Dillian White. Thank you.
He's found 2 there, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're talking about 2 great fighters.
He's starting to build quite the camp, Dillian.
Absolutely.
He's a shrewd cookie.
Agreed.
I think Wardley can do an awful lot of damage.
Yeah.
Again, look, when it comes down to it, to go and be the champion of the world, you're going to have to go and beat the virtually invincible Tyson Fury.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or the virtually invincible Anthony Joshua. Do you know what I mean?
I guess, look, Wardley's young enough to maybe last out the division. If he becomes what I think he can become, he will definitely want to go after the likes of Fury and Joshua. But he's young enough to last out the division. He's a young man. I think Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, I'm not hoping they have short careers after this point, but they're getting a bit older. They're getting a bit more experienced now. They might want to be thinking about retiring within the next 5 years or so. And in my opinion, Wardley will still be on his way up at that point.
Yeah, I think you could be right. I think I think the next steps for him. I think after Dubois and Joyce fight, I think the British title will probably become vacant, and then it's up to the governing bodies who they decide to fight for that vacant title. But he would certainly as the English champion, would have I think Eddie's got a good chance of making that fight with whoever that could be. So I think if he does it the right way, he's been the English champion. I like it when people do things the right way. So the English champion, then they become the British champion, then they go after the European title.
Agreed.
You watch somebody like Tyson Fury. He's had every belt there is.
Absolutely, and it proves your pedigree. It really does.
And it's how you get to the elite levels that you're going to need to become a world champion. It's no mean feat.
That absolutely, yeah. You can't just rely on raw talent and natural attributes. Absolutely.
So Fabio Wardley definitely one to watch. He's
absolutely,
a stunning performance, quite frankly. I mean, I think if he'd just got a victory over Larty, it'd have been one thing, but to make such a statement,
absolutely, yeah, he's definitely.
He sort of announced himself, hasn't he?
He's announced himself with bells, whistles, and full fanfare there. Really, I mean, and ultimately, such a lovely kid. His post-match interview was so humble.
Yeah.
He's an articulate fighter. Again, a statesman for the sport, which I love to see.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about young Ridings, and his trash talk. I've got to be perfectly honest with you. I thought the days of trash talk in boxing were well behind us. It's not something I like to see. If you're having to promote a fight through trash talk, then maybe the fight's not worth watching.
I don't mind a bit of trash talk if there's genuine needle there.
Yeah, well,
I don't like it when they, the sort of default position is I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that.
It becomes all consuming though, Mark, doesn't it? It becomes all consuming. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. We've had some great examples of Derek Chisora throwing chairs and stuff like that, which do make for great TV. They do, they make for a great interest in the sport. But when it gets down to such a personal sort of trash talk level, I've got no interest. I think, look, you're a young professional athlete here, which means you've got a responsibility to the sport and to the fans and to your young fans. I don't want my young daughter or son looking at the way you're talking about each other in a pre-match interview and thinking that that's acceptable. Represent is what I'm asking. That's just my slightly older, long in the tooth father's view on things. But yeah, trash talk. I don't enjoy it.
I don't mind it too much. It's part of the game. I don't think you'll ever get it from Wardley.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
He strikes me as unless there's genuine needle there, unless somebody genuinely does something, says something.
But Mark, we've seen examples of there are ways to handle that. I mean, Tyson Fury in his past, his most recent few matches, he's not resorted to trash talk. He's dealt with the incoming insults. Anthony Joshua is another one. I can't really think that he's ever resorted to the kind of base level trash talk that I object to. And I mean, Wardley, like I say, he didn't. His post-match interview was absolutely impeccable. He looks like he's going to be another statesman of boxing, and that's what I want to see coming through.
We need role models for sure, especially if we're going to make the argument to the government like Eddie's doing and like Frank's doing that boxing should get support from the government because it does such a lot for kids. You can't say that. You can't say that and then show people.
You're referring to the old boxing clubbing obesity around the tabs initiative, aren't
Yes,
you?
the boxing clubbing obesity around the tabs initiative, as you quite rightly called it last night. Yeah, no, I thought he made some very good points.
Yes, he did.
It ticks a lot of boxes. Does it help with childhood obesity? Of
Oh,
course
yeah,
it does.
absolutely.
But I think the most important thing about boxing gyms is that people learn manners and respect.
Agreed.
And discipline. And if you can find me one person that doesn't agree that we could do with more of that.
That's right, brother, and that's what I'm talking about. The trash talk completely belies all of that discipline.
Yeah.
Then it completely underscores it all. It makes it seem like it doesn't even exist. So,
and even old Derek's realised that there's no need for it anymore. There was no trash. There was the amount of respect between him and Usyk in the build up to their fight was beautiful.
Absolutely.
And then he went and bought him a Five Guys afterwards.
Absolutely perfect. That's the way.
That's how you should behave.
I mean, it's not the ultimate spokesmanship giving your opponent a Five Guys, but yeah, it's a lovely gesture.
Yeah.
And it's far better than chucking chairs at people, put it that way.
I believe it was a table that he threw another chair, wasn't it? And yeah.
But I think he's probably thrown most of the set of the gloves are off around at some point while he's been in there.
Lots of most of a press conference I believe in Germany or somewhere. After the Vitaly Klitschko fight, him and David Hay end up brawling.
I think it was.
And the cameras switch off because all the cameras are broke from being wrapped around people's heads. From what I can gather, I don't know if that footage, the full length brawl, will ever see the light of day. But
yeah, probably not.
So yeah, Derek's got form.
He really has. Anyway,
but even he didn't do that. But yeah, I take your point.
We're not here to talk about Derek and his previous misgivings, are we? We're here to talk about the exciting sort of talent that Wardley looks like he's going to be, and the kind of spokesman that we hope he's going to be going forwards into the game. Yeah, definitely.
So that was the brilliant Fabio Wardley. And we now come to the top of the bill.
Okay.
Conor Benn versus Sebastian Formella.
Okay, and do you think it was a top of the bill fight, my friend?
Well, I don't think it was intended initially to be the top of the bill. Obviously, this was meant to be the Dillian Whyte-Povetkin rematch, which would have been a pay-per-view fight.
Yep.
And then Povetkin tested positive for COVID, so
yep.
Eddie played the cards he was dealt, really, moved Benn to the top of the bill and made it just a Saturday night fight night. And I think as a Saturday night fight night, I think it was a brilliant top of the bill. And luckily for Uncle Eddie, Conor Benn put in a top of the bill performance, didn't he?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely met the top of the bill requirements. Like you say, not necessarily pay-per-view standard, but it was a class performance by young Ben. It really was. He showed levels there that I think people have been anticipating and expecting due to his pedigree and his background. But he really did show that this time round, and it was, in my opinion, a remarkable performance that I have no negatives to review.
Yeah, I thought it was punch perfect against a really, really tough opponent. Formella's no mug. He's gone 12 rounds with Sean Porter. I mean,
absolutely.
This guy's been fighting world champion, so it really was a huge step up for Conor Benn, and he dealt with him.
Yeah, I thought he dealt with him admirably, and like you say, he's no slouch. It's not like he wasn't in the fight at all. It's not like he's just a journeyman that turned up for a payday. It really was a tough opponent, or Formella really is a tough opponent. So yeah, I thought it was a decent test. I mean, the things that kind of jumped out to me really were the sort of a bit of Ben's ring craft and naivety was exposed in certain areas versus Formella's. So things like a bit of sort of leaning and whatnot. Ben didn't incorporate any of that into his strategy, whereas Formella relied on that a little bit. And I mean, from my point of view, I loved it. I like to see a fighter that's a purist, that's not relying.
You like to see a good, clean fight,
I do, mate. I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it ticked all the boxes for me. In all fairness.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent. I think there are, when you get to certain levels, the fact, and this doesn't make it right, but the fact that your opponent is going to use all of those tricks, like you say, the leaning on you,
absolutely.
the kind of pulling you in, you can get old man a little bit, can't you? Pulled around. You can. That takes rounds out of your legs.
Yeah.
But I thought Conor Benn's movement and speed, particularly, were just fantastic. There were times when Formella just did not know what he was going to hit him with next.
Absolutely.
I think he proved he's got power in both hands. Although I doubt anybody's ever going to get Formella out of there.
Yeah.
He looked like he could take that all day long, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was the same with Sean Porter. Sean Porter hit him with the kitchen sink. And he was still stood there. This guy's real tough. He's got an absolute
and he showed it again. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't until the end of the fight that he started to look like he was getting beat up a little bit.
Yeah.
But the pace of the entire fight was
ferocious,
unrelenting, wasn't it? It really was. I mean, there were several points where we cut to the Benn corner towards the latter stages of the fight, and I was genuinely concerned that Conor Benn wouldn't have the stamina to continue. He was panting, he was struggling to get his breath, and he really looked like he couldn't step out and take another round. And then, well, you saw yourself, the minute he stepped into the ring and the bell went, he switched into a different mode. He's got a beast inside him, he really has.
He certainly has. And I think the concern for me before the fight was that because it's going to be so difficult to get a Formella out of there, I didn't know whether Ben had got the stamina to fight at the pace he was going to need to win the way he did.
Yes.
But he looked like he could have, gone another 12 rounds.
Well, yeah, that might have been pushing it a little bit. But I mean, when he was in the ring, certainly he showed no signs of tiring at all. Like I say, my concern was the little insights that we got in the corner where the poor guy just looked absolutely rinsed. But yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of this. Is the one of the few upsides to behind closed doors boxing.
Yes.
Because if you got a crowd there, particularly a Conor Benn crowd, you wouldn't hear those things. You wouldn't see necessarily. You You hear the punches. You can hear people breathing.
True, it's true. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the roar of the crowd, and I can't wait till crowds are back for these massive, massive fights. But it's been a really, really interesting experience watching the behind the scenes.
And I think you make a really interesting point there as well, Mark, because I think his performance would have been influenced somewhat by a crowd.
Yeah.
I think he would have taken chances that he didn't need to take in that particular fight.
You mean like perhaps got carried away trying to get him out of there?
Absolutely. And
get yourself tagged with something yourself.
Yeah, I think the silence of this behind closed doors boxing, or the relative silence of it, the ability to focus on what's going on in the ring, it's certainly leading to a much purer form of boxing. There does seem to be less of the ringcraft tricks being employed, because people seem to be able to focus on what their game plan is, what the corner's game plan is, and they seem to be able to execute it as much as possible if things are going well for them.
And of course they can hear the instructions from the corner all the way through the fight, whereas in normal circumstances they can only hear them when they're sat on their stool.
That's right.
So you've got those few seconds to take in that information. You heard the trainers and also people, people that were there, that are there from the various teams, shouting encouragement or instructions.
I've got to say, in my opinion, boxing really hasn't suffered from going closed doors and continuing to fight with no crowd. versus something like a football, which really just feels extremely soulless when you're watching it without a crowd. I think, you know, there's something diminishing about not having a crowd for a live event like football, but I don't think it's affected boxing in the same way at all. And I've got to say, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of these closed door bouts.
I think you have to give huge respect to any promoter that's getting on fights in this current climate.
Of course, mate.
I think, without any disrespect to the other promoters, I think Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have done something that's just a different level, really. The fights in the back garden, and even when they've gone into a more studio style, they've made it. You know, it's got bells and whistles on.
It really has.
He throws the kitchen sink at it, Eddie, and it looked great.
You can rely.
The ring walks are great. The music's great. The fireworks and stuff at Matchroom Fight Camp were it was sensational.
Yeah. You can rely on Eddie to put on a decent show.
I think him and Frank are saving boxing, to be honest with you, because it would have been easy to just tuck up and say, right, well, we'll just wait then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And boxing becomes less and less relevant. Yeah. It's already fighting for its place.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, it's a fringe sport. Let's be honest. Lots of people don't like boxing. They don't like. They think it's barbaric or whatever it is.
Well, I think it's got its days numbered if certain people get their way with it, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's why it's so important that we keep trying to make the sport safer.
Yeah.
You know, and coming back to what you were saying about the likes of Tom Little, for example, who's not necessarily in shape.
Yeah.
I think it's much safer when people are living the life and are training like professional athletes.
Yeah.
A classic case in point being, if you remember back to early in Dillian White's career, and then he made the switch to Loughborough.
I really do, yeah.
And look at the difference. I think Dillian White's probably the most improved heavyweight on planet Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly within the past 2-3 years. I mean, since he started taking it seriously, and you can see that change. You really can see that change. It's not just a physical change or a change in skills and prowess in the ring. It seems to be a wholesale mental change as well. You know, Dillian's. I mean, for a while there, I really struggled to watch anything. Any kind of interview that Dillian was giving, because he just didn't seem to have the headspace to want to be the boxer that he was turning into. He seemed to be battling with Matchroom. He seemed to be battling with people that he wasn't supposed to be battling with. He seemed to be battling with his own team, with the idea of getting himself in shape. And you're right, the most improved heavyweight that we've seen in all of world boxing over the past few years is Dillian White, and it is because he started focusing and taking things seriously. And hats off to the guys at Loughborough. Yeah, we've got friends at Loughborough University, and they're doing a fantastic job looking after Dillian White.
Yeah, I believe he's still. He's in Portugal at the moment, but I think he's still got big connections to the sports scientist at Loughborough. And point being really that if you've got all that sports science around you and you're living the life and you're not cheating a bit and you're not missing the extra couple of rounds of sparring and missing that run and missing, it makes it safer, and it's key really, because the only way boxing is going to continue is if we can keep making it safer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the way that Eddie and Frank are going about things now, because they're being forced to make more competitive fights. There's no room for tune-up fights anymore.
Right.
You've only got so many slots, and they're filling them with 50-50 fights. It's been much more competitive, and for that reason, you get great fights, don't you?
And it feels all the better for it. It feels like more value. I personally, I don't mind watching any kind of fight, but this feels like prime value boxing for what you're getting, doesn't it? It really does. So,
like you say, we'd watch it anyway, but nobody wants to see a world level champion having an 8-round tune-up.
That's
Whereas
right.
we used to see those things all the time.
Yes, we did.
There's just there's no time for that now, and I think in turn that will grow the sport of boxing. It's been as you said, it's been a tough landscape for them, but I think it's been a much better spectacle than it was previously. And,
agreed.
Again,
agreed.
big respect to
Eddie and Frank. From my point of view, you know me, I like to see skill. I like to see well thought out game plans. I like to see boxers relying on their natural attributes, and it seems to be, from my point of view, we're getting a lot more of that type of boxing with this format. So bang, gets my stamp of approval. Keep the crowds out. Obviously we can't do that because we need the massive cash injection that fans bring to boxing, but I'm going to be a little bit sad to see the format change back to normality when we get past the pandemic, unfortunately.
Yeah, a little bit. Anyway, so coming back to coming back to Conor Benn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So brilliant performance against Sebastian Formella.
Can I just say, shout out to Conor Benn's tattoos, my friend.
He's got some great ink, hasn't he?
What a set of ink that is. I mean, the man's a walking picture. He really is. I want to read that story. That's watching him. It made me think, wow, I need to know the story behind that. So hopefully, Conor, if you're watching, or if any of Conor's fans or family or friends are watching, we need to know the story behind your ink. We need you to come on the on the show and talk to us about just what the ink means, because we're massive fans.
So the big question, Blair.
Yep.
What next for Conor Benn?
Well, we all heard the comments, didn't we? We all heard where Conor Benn wants to go. But before we go to that, it's a really interesting question, because it's such a tough division, Mark, and
both domestically and even more so at world level.
Absolutely, and I think any way Conor Benn turns, there is just there are maybe some easier options, but I think any way Conor Benn turns at this point in his career are stiff challenges. There's no easy option.
And you certainly can't go back, can you? It's no good going backwards in level. So
absolutely not.
Calling Josh Kelly out, certainly I think he's
boom. That was the one, wasn't it?
It's a fight the fans want to see.
It was a big surprise. It definitely was a big surprise. I wasn't expecting it. It's a ballsy move, because let's face it, everything we've seen from Josh Kelly so far, it's impeccable. The kid seems to be he seems to have all the attributes of a computer game boxer. He's fast, he's skillful, he's confident.
Some of the angles,
he's unrelenting. He's fast, he's confident, he's unrelenting, he never steps backwards. Like you say, some of the angles that he throws out are amazing. So I mean, Josh Kelly, an absolute star of a boxer, but not the call out I was expecting, to be fair.
No, and I will say, also not the finished article. Has had his bumps in the road. Has had, there are blemishes on his career. A draw with Robinson, and he's had moments in fights where he hasn't turned it on. He's not always been. Yes, if you look at his showreel highlights, he looks spectacular, but there have been moments, and Conor Benn's clearly seen something that he thinks he can exploit.
Absolutely.
And if Conor Benn's as talented as we think he is, then that's one hell of a fight. That really is.
It's going to be a great fight. Absolutely. Yeah, I think what we've seen with Conor Benn is that he's prepared and capable and able to step up to that next level now. And actually, you think about it, it wouldn't make any sense for him to call out the champs. So Kelly is. It's a tough one, but it makes sense, really.
Well, if you think about the leap up to Formella, if you think about the same leap again, that's probably the fight, isn't it?
And if you're taking strides like that, why not continue to take strides like that? Yeah,
I think they had ordered the Benn versus Jenkins fight, but because one's a Queensberry fighter and one's a Matchroom fighter, that's going to end. If that happens, that's going to end up in purse bids, because they seem to. I think there was an offer made and turned down. So
those boys like to have the back and forwards, don't they?
Well, yes, it's the burgeoning romance of the year, isn't it, Frank and Eddie? When they finally get round to having that dinner, perhaps they're going to get together for Christmas dinner. Maybe that's what'll happen.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Can you imagine?
What I wouldn't give to be a fly on the wall in that situation.
Yeah,
that'd be great fun.
So in all seriousness, let's hope that meeting does happen, because there are some fights that we really need to see.
Yeah,
And
Frank, if you're worried, I can lend you a bulletproof vest.
He's all right. He's bulletproof enough. I
think so.
It's nothing new to Frank. Nothing new whatsoever.
Back to Conor Benn. I'm really impressed. Like I say, no negatives. What I did find really interesting was his approach. His stance was very low. He was what I call low anyway, as in hunched. Not quite as hunched as a sort of a Alan Babich, but he was looking for a way in that wasn't necessarily your traditional stand and Queensberry rules pugilism, was he? So it was interesting to see, because I don't think I'd seen that part of his game before either.
Yeah, and against good fighters, you're going to need to make different. You're going to need to show them different things to get openings, aren't you? And he certainly proved that he can do that. So Conor Benn, I think he's got a really bright future ahead of him. I love the Josh Kelly fight. I think that's a great fight. I think the Chris Congo fight or Jenkins fight are also good fights.
Yeah.
As we've said, look, let's let's be realistic now. Even if you combined Conor Benn's skill set, Josh Kelly's skill set, Chris Congo's skill set, and Chris Jenkins' skill set, all four of them combined, they're going to struggle to go and beat Terence Crawford or Errol Spence Jr. I think those two are among the best pound for pound on the planet.
I agree entirely.
And that's the fight we really need to see. Crawford.
That's the fight we need to see.
Crawford versus Spence Jr. is an amazing fight. I mean, it really is. I couldn't call it though, could you?
Well, no, I really couldn't. You just got to, experience-wise, they're both about the same. You got to maybe wonder about the age advantage. That's about the only thing I could put it down to. And even that's not going to be massive, really. They've both got a similar amount of experience and belts. I really struggle to call it, but really I'm keen to see it. So come on, boys, get your heads together. Let's sort that out. Let's do one for the boxing world. We want to see that fight. Bring it on. But anyway, just before we move past that, I just want to say shout out to Formella as well. Great opponent. Definitely not a slouch. Definitely not a journeyman. Somebody who was a very, very legitimate challenge for Conor Benn to take on. And I think acquitted himself admirably and still got plenty of mileage in that division himself, in my opinion.
Agreed. A very, very, very tough fighter. Very, very tough fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. An absolute warrior. So great stuff. So now we come to our new weekly section. Obviously everything's new. But our weekly section, that's going to be a recurring theme for us, is not a cat interrupting. Come on, out the way.
To be honest, the cat knows more about boxing than most of us. She's just trying to muscle in.
She's just trying to muscle in, give her opinion. But essentially, our new weekly section is going to be called Champ or Chump. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick out a couple of big stories in the boxing world, and we're just going to dissect them, and then we're ultimately going to give them a champ or a chump rating. Quite gimmicky, which I make no apologies for. Everybody likes a gimmick. But our first story that we're going to discuss and give a rating to this week is David Allen and his decision to step down from pro boxing. So, Mark, what do you think about that?
Well, I think Dave's had a brilliant career, hasn't he?
Agreed. Yeah.
I think he's had ups and downs. I think the reason he's got such a huge following is that he is a very honest, heart on his sleeve kind of guy. So you've kind of lived through that with him. So he's took fights that he shouldn't have took. He's fought people at short notice when he shouldn't have. He's also had some brilliant performances. The knockout of Lucas Brown sticks out as a particular highlight. Nobody was expecting him to do that. And he absolutely put him to sleep. I think Dave's brilliant for boxing. I think he's a great character. I'm hoping Uncle Eddie's going to give him a job. Uncle Eddie, if you're watching, I'm pretty sure he will be hounding you and you won't have any choice, but it would be madness not to. He's very well liked, very knowledgeable, and a very funny guy, very engaging. And Dave, if you're stuck, we can always find you something to do here at Rumblecast for sure.
Indeed.
I think it's a brilliant decision. I watched the interview with Dave where he talked about getting knocked out on his feet in sparring with Alexander Usyk.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was then brave enough to show you the clip.
Yeah.
He's put it out there for you to see, and if you listen carefully, you can actually hear him do a little snore. He gets caught and he's out on his feet.
Poor guy.
He continues for the rest of the round, and he actually does quite well.
Yeah.
But then the scary thing happens, and this is, I think, why Dave's made the decision. He then realised that it was 30 minutes later and he was packing his bag and he couldn't remember what had happened in the last 30 minutes.
That is terrifying.
And after the very, very bad situation he was in after the David Price defeat, hospitalised and, in real trouble, really. A lot of people were concerned about Dave's health then. I think I expected him to retire then.
Yeah.
He will be missed. It's a great, it's a big loss to boxing because if you think about it, he's been on so many brilliant pay-per-view cards over the years.
Has, yeah, absolutely.
Fights that he's won, fights that he's lost, but never ever are they anything less than entertaining.
Look, he's a staple of British boxing, which is, it's a sad decision, but I mean, ultimately, after his revelation that he was completely unaware of what had happened during that fight for 30 minutes, you got to say it's the only decision to make. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's a brave decision because essentially you're a young man and you're turning your back on your income, you're turning your back on your livelihood. So it really is a brave decision, and look, I think it's to be commended. I think a lot more of our boxers should be making responsible decisions about their health, such as this.
Agreed. So for me, Dave Allen retirement decision, I think that's a clear champ.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. So Dave Allen, you're a champ. And we move on to... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I would also add to that Big Tom Allen also made a similar decision this week, and I think that's also a brilliant decision.
There you go.
I hope they both stay in boxing. I hope we see them. We hope we see them soon.
Yeah, like we say, hit us up at Rumblecast. We've got ideas for you boys.
Right.
Okay.
So the next boxer I need to talk to you about, Blair.
Okay, please do.
Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder.
Wow.
What the fucking hell is he talking about?
Okay, well look, he's seriously putting some strange ideas out there at the moment, isn't he? So I guess it's from my point of view, it sounds like your standard bitching and griping that we should be beyond. If we're professionals here, we should be beyond it. I mean, it takes me back very much to David Hayes' loss against Klitschko.
Oh, and he's the toe debacle.
The toe debacle, indeed, where, you know, he was clearly outclassed. And rather than graciously accept that he was outclassed by the good big un in this case, he decided that, you know, he was going to lay some of the fucking blame on the fact they had a broken toe. So, you know, that never felt right. Felt like an excuse. Felt like a disgusting excuse and a way of diminishing another fighter's accomplishment. And if we go back to Deontay Wilder, well, to be honest, mate, his accusations
it's much worse, isn't it?
Far wilder. And yeah, come on,
it's much worse.
On,
so let's just run through them. So first of all, he lost because his suit was too heavy.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Then he lost because his trainer was in cahoots with Fury and threw the towel in.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Then he lost because his trainer had drugged his water.
Yeah, again.
Then he lost because Tyson Fury had got some sort of egg-shaped metal object in the gloves.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right, now just to give that some... It doesn't even deserve oxygen, if I'm really honest.
It doesn't, mate. It doesn't.
But let's just take that one point, the glove cheating,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
He's shown you he's got a lump taken out of his head, and that can only have been done by Tyson Fury cheating by putting something in his gloves.
Yeah.
Right. For that to be true, the State Commission, the Boxing Board of Control, just about every official body involved in that fight would have had to been in cahoots. The referee would have had to be in cahoots, and his whole team, because his trainer, J. Diaz, not the one that drugged him, the one that he likes, was there.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Your hands are wrapped, they're signed, your gloves are on, they're signed. Nobody is ever on their own long enough to do any tampering with any gloves. No. And let's have it right, Tyson Fury does not need to cheat to beat Deontay Wilder.
No, he doesn't. I mean, also, if you're a student of Tyson Fury and you've watched any interview that he's given over the past 10 years or so, Tyson Fury openly admits that as a boxer, yes, he will take any advantage that he can get over you. So when he's got his hands wrapped, when they're in gloves, he's all openly admitted he starts working those gloves immediately to start giving himself an advantage. He's a smart fighter. It isn't cheating, it's ringcraft. So he starts needling away at those gloves, and look, you might get closer to Fury's knuckles than you do with most boxers, and that could quite easily cause a dent in your skull. But to be perfectly honest, like you say, the fact that Deontay Wilder is implicating all these people in some kind of massive conspiracy to dethrone him from the WBC champion spot is just ridiculous. It's unhinged. I will go so far as to say.
I think Tyson Fury went on national television and said that he was worried for Deontay's mental health because the things that he's saying make absolutely no sense.
Me too.
I understand how some, I think boxers have egos, there's no doubt about that.
Course.
And I think his ego, the idea that he got such a beating from Fury, his brain just can't compute that.
Yeah.
And that's a real shame because he just, he could have just kept his mouth shut, couldn't he?
I don't know.
But instead, I mean, if you look at the video, the lengths they've gone to as well, it's full of biblical verses.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It's got production values like a TV show. It's not somebody poking an iPhone in his face. He's thought about this. And my question is, the people that are around Deontay Wilder, why has nobody said to him, hey, this is a really, really bad thing to do?
Okay,
You're going to look silly.
I'm gonna chuck out my theory on this now, which is going to be controversial to say the very best. But I think that because they've had Donald Trump as a president for the past 4 years, and Donald Trump's made such a concerted effort to delegitimize all kinds of reporting by throwing it into doubt and casting aspersions on it, calling it fake news, outright lying in his own way. I think to a certain extent he's made that a legitimate form of rebuttal for the American people. And it seems to me very much like Deontay Wilder has just taken a page out of Donald Trump's book and simply declaring that, you know, he was the winner despite all the facts, all of the visible facts pointing to the contrary, very much like Trump's done with the election, really. All the facts point one way, Trump's telling you one thing, Wilder's telling you one thing, it just doesn't compute. And I do think that the Trump administration is bound to have had an effect on the psyche of certain people in America in terms of their responses to these kind of situations.
I'm not sure that I see the link between, sort of directly being between Trump and Wilder, but what I will say is the claims that he's making are as fucking ridiculous as the things that Trump says.
There you go, absolutely.
So, you know, that's what I will say.
Yeah.
And to then, I do worry about the people that are around him, to then let the contract run out, you know, and he's only come out after the contract's expired, suddenly he's got something to say.
Oh yeah, and he's got a list of fighters now.
I can't figure out whether he wants to fight Fury again, whether he's just trying to save face, whether he thinks he can beat him, whether he's let that run out and he's going to say that Fury's avoiding him. I just don't.
We've seen it.
I don't know what game he's playing.
We've seen it 1,000 times before. Not usually as ungracious as this, but it's legacy protecting. It's, you know, boxing is a big money machine. We know this. We know there's, you know. We know that for lots of fighters, it's their only form of income. You know, what does Deontay Wilder have in the pipeline at this stage if he's not fighting? So I think it's legacy protecting. I think the like I say, I'm linking it back to Trump again, but the idea that you can just lie and say no, it happened this way is very much something that I think certain people in America have been encouraged to do. So yeah.
Well, I think it damages his legacy. Also, there are side effects of what he said, because part of what he said was that he was offered a fortune to fight Anthony Joshua, and he stuck to his word and fought Tyson Fury. Now, this is Deontay Wilder that claimed that Joshua was running away from him, didn't want to fight him, that he turned down $100 million, and
absolutely.
He doesn't want any of that smoke. And it turns out it's absolute rubbish. Joshua's been trying to fight him the whole time.
Absolutely.
Because he wanted the belt.
As we knew.
I always thought that was the case. It's hard for me because I am a huge Deontay Wilder fan. Yeah. Let's just get that right. You know what I mean? What a fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And short of being outclassed by, possibly the best heavyweight on planet Earth just now, there's no disgrace in that. And I wish he'd just taken his licks like a man, because this might seem a little bit controversial, but I still think he beats the rest.
Okay, so we come to the point of the show where we are now talking about the upcoming fights for the weekend. So, do you want to take it away? With our first fight, our first sort of a headline fight of the weekend is Dubois versus Joyce. What are your thoughts on this one, Mark?
I think it's a brilliant fight. I think it's brilliant. You've got the really, really exciting young prospect in Daniel Dubois, who clearly has, he's called Dynamite Dubois. He's clearly got dynamite in both hands. He's got absolutely brutal one-punch power. Has he still got things that he needs to learn? Yes. Has he still got questions to answer? Yeah, probably. Yeah. They will get answered against somebody like Joyce for sure. With his pedigree, his brilliant amateur experience, and he's just fought such a higher level of opponent in comparison to Dubois. We know the things we know about Joe. You know what people have been saying. Big John Fury said you could hit him over the head with a baseball bat and the battle break. You know what I mean? And everybody that's had him in sparring will tell you that he's the toughest man they've ever sparred.
Absolutely.
You can't budge him. Yep. He just keeps coming. And over a long spar, and you've seen it in fights, his punch output increases as the fight goes on.
Yep.
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because it's not really a fan-friendly style. He doesn't do anything spectacular and explosive like Dubois. That's why the fans gravitate perhaps more towards Dubois.
Yep.
But boy, is it effective.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's dealt with everything in front of him so far. We've only ever seen him in a bit of trouble once, and that was a body shot from Jennings.
Yep.
I think that will be something that he's worked on, because he knows he can't afford to get hit by Dubois' short left to the body, because we've seen how devastating that can be. Yeah. But then Joyce looks in really, he's trimmed down, I think, for this fight. He looks a lot smaller than he has been previously, so they will have a game plan. He's got a great corner. Both, to be fair, they've both got phenomenal teams. They've got great teams, so they will have game plans.
Yeah.
But as the great Mike Tyson once said, everyone's got a plan till they get punched on the nose.
That's true. It's very true.
He's always misquoted, actually, because they always say everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face, and he didn't. He said everyone's got a plan till I punch him on the nose.
There you go.
Very specifically on your nose.
Absolutely.
So there you are. I think it's an intriguing fight. I'm genuinely struggling to call it. I think if I was gonna gun to my head and had to pick one, I'd go Joyce. I just think his experience. I just think he's better than he looks.
Yeah.
And I think he's much better than than lots of people think.
Well, look, I'm inclined to trust the opinion and the views of the Fury camp. Definitely, those boys aren't wrong about boxers. They really aren't. Very rarely wrong. They're constantly telling you that people are the people to look out for, and constantly being proven right. My heart says I want to see a Dubois win, because I'd hate to see a stumbling block in this young man's career at this stage. And we all know the emphasis that's placed on keeping an O record. Far too much emphasis, in my opinion, but it will be considered to be a stumbling block, and he possibly won't get the opportunities as early if he doesn't beat Joyce. And I'd hate to see that. I'd hate to see that derail, because I genuinely think we've got the makings of a champ here. And yeah, he's a young guy. He's still got a man's body to grow into. He's still got ring craft to develop, boxing IQ again, to use the phrase, to develop. But like I say, at this point in his career, I think this young man could go on and achieve just about the heights of the division, really.
I agree. If he's as good as he looks.
Yeah.
If he's as good as he looks, you're looking at a future world champion.
Okay.
Whether or not he'll get this...
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty in it then. How many rounds are we talking?
How long do I think it'll go?
Yeah, how many do you think it'll go?
I think...
Is it going the distance? Are we looking at a... well, if you're calling Joyce... You've got to be saying the distance.
Oh, I think Joyce might get him out of there late.
Oh, really?
What he tends to do is come on really strong at the end of fights, and people just can't take the relentless nature of the punch output.
Okay.
If you look at the go and look at the punch stats, he throws ridiculous amounts of punches late in fights.
Yeah.
He can come on. He can do that for
What's your
12
call
rounds.
then? What round?
I think Joyce in perhaps 10 or 11.
Okay, interesting.
Or it'll be Dubois early.
Yeah.
So if Dubois is going to get him, he'll get him early.
I'm going Dubois in 3.
Okay, Dubois in 3. I'll go Joyce in 10. We will inevitably be fucking wrong about that, because we're wrong about most things.
Of course we will. Of course we will.
But I'm really looking forward to it. It's a great fight, and good luck to both men. And I hope they, as long as they get home safe to their families afterwards.
Absolutely.
That's all that really matters.
Absolutely. So yeah, Dubois in 3 from me, and Joyce in 10 or 11
10
from
or
you.
11 for me, late in the fight.
Oh, it's nice to have opposing views on this. We'll see who's right. Probably, like you say, probably neither of us will be right, but yeah, it'll be a cracker either way.
There's such a lot at stake.
Yeah,
it's the British, European and Commonwealth titles, and the winner's going to get a crack at the world champ.
There you go. Which is why desperately I want to see Dubois.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like I think most fans would rather see Dubois' journey continue.
Yeah,
Nothing against Joe Joyce at all.
Yeah.
But they'd rather see that continue.
That's where I'm.
That's what you want to see, because we like those explosive fighters.
Oh, we do, definitely. Right, moving on to the second fight of the weekend then, if this can even be considered a fight. So it's technically billed as an exhibition, and what we have is aged cartoon personality Mike Tyson.
I do believe his best work was the Mike Tyson mysteries since his retirement.
His retirement, definitely. Aged former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson taking on aged former heavyweight champion Roy Jones Jr. What do we think to this?
Honestly, I don't think at 54 and 51 they should be fighting.
Okay.
I don't. I worry that something horrible will happen, and it'll do such damage to boxing.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any such thing as an exhibition fight with either of those two men.
Yeah.
They have been, and again, coming back to watching some of the John Fury interviews over the last couple of days, I think John Fury gets it right. He thinks that men that have been that good shouldn't be fighting, because you want to remember them. Let's face it, right? Roy Jones. Roy Jones in his own weight class.
On your own legacy, like
Roy Jones in his own weight class at the peak of his career was, unbeatable.
Yeah,
unbeatable. He could be the best to have ever done it.
Mark and Hanspeed to die for. Fucking hell.
And then in Mike Tyson, we've said this a lot. We're big for. We love Mike Tyson, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's a period between sort of when Mike Tyson's sort of 19 to 20 years old, where I think he's the best that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
He wasn't, for me, he doesn't make the top 10 greatest of all time or any of that stuff. I don't think so, because his resume and the way he conducted himself and the way he didn't live the life, coming back to the things that you were saying earlier, he was a natural specimen, and that got him so far.
It did, yeah.
But the 19-year-old Mike Tyson,
phenomenal.
I don't think you could stop him.
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah. If he could stay in that perfect sort of a condition for the majority of his career, he'd still be a world champ now. He really would.
At 54, that's it's a big ask. But yeah, to be honest, I'm inclined not to have too much to say about the fight, really.
Are you going to watch it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, interesting.
I don't think so.
I should be watching. I think I'm going to make a call. I think this is so. I think the format favours Tyson. I really do. However, I think purely because Roy Jones Jr. only officially retired 2 years ago and looks like he's never been out of a training camp, whereas from what I've seen of Mike Tyson, he doesn't look to be as strong, he doesn't look to be in as good condition, and my fears really are for Mike Tyson within this fight. I think this is a Roy Jones win, I really do.
I just hope they both end up safe.
Yeah,
because I think
so
I do think it's dangerous. I mean, if you've only got to look at the end of their careers, it's easy to get carried away with it's Mike Tyson, it's Roy Jones.
Yeah.
But look at the end of their careers; they're getting beaten by fucking taxi drivers.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And
no disrespect to the opponents that beat them there either, but like they're losing to people that
they shouldn't be losing.
Shouldn't even be in the ring.
Yeah. And I mean, let's go on the record here. I agree with you 100%. I think it's dangerous. I think it's irresponsible. I don't think it's the kind of fucking match that we should be giving any attention or focus to. But we're doing our jobs. We're reporting on what's in the what's up and coming. I can't believe that anybody thinks this is a good idea. Even though it's for altruistic reasons, it's for charity. Mike Tyson has spent a lot of his time over the past years trying to make sure that everything he does with the talents that he's got and the celebrity that he's got is to benefit other people. So it's a very altruistic reason for doing it. But come on, Mike, let's not be having a heart attack. We've already lost a sporting legend this week in Diego Maradona. We don't need to be losing another. And I have a genuine fear for Mike Tyson, having looked at the shape that he's in.
Yeah, well, I think there's a worry there for both of them. For me, I worry that if it's a huge success, that they're going to do more of it. And there's already whisperings about Evander Holyfield, Shannon Briggs, these kind of people.
Although it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, if you're going to go down that route, there are a couple of classics that I maybe wouldn't mind seeing. I think I've got my eye on Ben Eubank. I mean, everything tells me no, but
there's no way Nigel Benn can ever fight again after, because he was going to, wasn't he? And then for medical reasons he wasn't allowed to, and I think that's a brilliant decision.
But I mean, what's probably going to happen, Mark, is we're going to get this fight and we're going to sit down and watch it, and they're both going to stink the fucking place out. They're both old men. Who needs to see old men fighting?
Yeah. I'm just not a fan of it. I just think it's a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
And you're not going to get Mike Tyson, are you? And you're not going to get Roy Jones.
No, of course
you're going to get these two old blokes.
Of course you're not.
And you can get yourself in shape and look amazing on the pads and hitting bags and whatever. But as somebody quite rightly said, pads ain't hitting back, are they? Unless your trainers are twat.
It's a very fair point.
I mean, Deontay Wilder's trainer was probably hitting him with the pads. You know what I mean?
Given what's been said,
given that he's his mortal enemy for some fucking reason.
Given what's been said. So well, look, that's our conclusion on that one. Are you going to make a call on it, or are you just going to abstain from?
I'm going to abstain from. I'm trying not to comment on it at all. I'm trying not to give it any oxygen, because after the event, and I fucking hope I'm wrong, but after the event, if either of them are hurt or anything, I don't want to have been.
Well, you get to wag your finger and say, I told you so in that case.
Well, I wouldn't even do that, I don't think, but because I hope I'm wrong. What I'd really like is it to be fucking called off at the last minute,
That'd be interesting. I don't think they're going to do it because of the charitable cause.
Well, yeah, and you know what I will say is, I bet it does fucking stupid numbers.
I bet it does, yeah. Well, look, I've already been hit up by people today that I wouldn't normally talk boxing with, who are asking me, are you going to watch the fight? What's your prediction on it? So, it's in people's psyche, and we're UK based, so imagine what that's been in America.
Like in America, yeah. Where they're two icons of the sport.
Absolutely.
Outside of perhaps Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson's about as famous a boxer as everybody knows who Mike Tyson is, whether you like boxing, whether you've never seen a fight.
Hey, put it this way: he's more famous than the majority of them that have gone out there and got deep fried grills or all that kind of stuff. He's not done a lot to get his face out there in a positive way, but he's known by just about everybody.
Well, I just think his time would be better spent making a new season of the Mike Tyson Mysteries.
As do I.
I miss Pigeon.
Oh, me too.
Me too.
Mike,
if you're watching.
Yeah, Mike, if you're watching, get back in the studio. Come on, we need season 4 of the Mike Tyson Mysteries.
Get it done.
So those are recommendations to watch. If you haven't ever watched the Mike Tyson Mysteries, make sure you go online and find that somewhere. It's classic comedy TV, adult-oriented comedy. Don't sit and watch it.
Oh yeah, it's not for the kids. Even though it looks a bit like Scooby-Doo, it's definitely not.
He's definitely not. But yeah, Mike Tyson showing his talents in other ways. So yeah,
he's clearly got
far better used.
Clearly got an awesome sense of humour, Mike Tyson. It's one of the many things I like about it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've reached the top of the show. Some interesting content there, I hope you'll find. So we've about exhausted all of our opinions for this week. But what have we got coming up next week, Mark?
So next week we're going to look back at the Dubois and Joyce fight, obviously, and the undercard. We will preview the phenomenal talent that is Billy Joe Saunders, who fights Martin Murray. I'm really looking forward to seeing Billy Joe back. And then something I want to talk to you about next week, dude, is the new WBC Bridgerweight division.
Okay, yeah.
We'll cover it next week, so I won't go into it now. But I think that's a really interesting discussion to be had.
Agreed.
So those are the things that we've got on the agenda for next week. So we'll see you then.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And if you could give us a like and subscribe to the channel.
And send us your money.
Send us your money. No, don't at all.
Don't send us your money. No, don't do that.
Like and subscribe, share the video, and hopefully see you next week. And yeah, feel free to comment. Feel free to say whatever you want. We will be not answering your comments.
Yeah, and just a little point of order here. If you are going to slag us off in the comments, I'm not going to read them unless you misspell every fucking word. So I want real illiteracy going on if you're going to call me a twat.
Hey, look, the other thing is, if you're going to slag me off in the comments, prepare to be slagged off back.
Yeah, we probably deserve it. Anyway, that's it. We'll see you next week.